it's one, it's arguably our knowledge of human nature is almost inherently by definition incomplete because we don't understand the mind completely yet. We don't understand everything. So although we don't often like to admit it, and most really good scientists will admit this, science at its best is just really educated guesses, right? It's testing, it's proving, but there's never a
Not
definitive
all of it.
solution.
I mean, because they do, brain scans and they've done
Sure, but
studies. They
even
know how the neurons work, and
well, it's a
yes,
beautiful,
but
it's a
yeah, of course, science is always
yeah,
growing,
yeah. Well,
and
it's a beautiful
we have
to where
more
I'm going with this
information now
too.
than we did at one time.
Sure,
But
definitely more
okay,
information now. But even when we're looking at brain scans and neurons, there's always like you can continue to ask questions and understanding of it, and it hits a wall. It hits a limit where like I don't know why
hmm
that neuron does that. I don't know what's going on in that
hmm
area of the brain that's too complex
right,
for us to understand,
hmm
right? So there's that aspect of it that makes it really hard. And then I think even
okay, but you're
individually,
also fixating just on science, right?
that's fine.
And
Yeah, yeah.
okay, and so there's psychotherapy. And this is a
Well, let me
frustration that
finish the question
well,
first, Elaine, because I think it's
okay.
relevant to what you're about to say. Because I sense like a strong passion in you for this, understandably so, right? And it's interesting because there's like the passion for it, and it seems to be, and this is an open question to you, like paired with um maybe for lack of a better word, like a fear of what you see in the world today, of like the political situation, the societal situation. And I don't know you from before this conversation,
hmm
but just through this conversation, it seems to be you have points of view, right? I would assume you're liberal based on the conversation. The things about what certain
hmm
Republicans do being bad,
I'm a
right? We've talked
social
about,
worker, so it
yeah,
doesn't
exactly,
take
right.
right rocket
The
science to figure that
vaccine,
out.
all the different things, the reason people believe what
Right,
they believed, all these different things.
right. But
Do you
yes, I'm
worry at
also
all?
rational.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to ask. There isn't. I personally believe we can't be certain about anything. The way in which you're speaking, and I'm not saying this to knock you. I'm saying it to explore it. There's a
Yeah.
great deal of confidence in what you're saying. That like when these
Yes.
people did this, that was bad. This was dangerous. The science was clear. People didn't follow it. I'm not
Right.
looking to get into that debate about it, although it's certainly an interesting debate to have. But to me, it's more representative of the challenge of human nature, right? Like even you who are
Yes.
so well versed in this, and maybe you're right to be so. So give me that answer if it's the case. But even you who are so well versed in this, you're drawing conclusions in your mind. You're making assumptions and judgments about people and
What
situations.
conclusions do you think I'm drawing?
Well, I think just in what we're talking about. And I'm not judging the conclusions per se
No, tell me,
in what
give me
they
an
are.
example of where you
I think
think
you
I'm
said the
drawing a
science is
conclusion.
so clear about certain things, therefore people should have done X, right? And maybe he was talking about the
Like
vaccines.
what? I need you to be
Um,
specific.
well, you said it, right? You said a lot of things, but I think in the conversation when you're talking about vaccines as an example, right? Like the science is so clear that the vaccines work and I don't know if you said everybody should get them. So maybe give me the view on it. Um,
I was trying to explain why people reacted to the vaccine the way that they did,
okay,
right?
fair
And
enough.
talking about, I'm not saying myself making the argument that the vaccine,
Sure.
I'm saying that this is what other people were saying,
Right.
right? And the point that I was trying to make is they were trying to use information and reason to get people to take the vaccine.
Sure.
And my point is that that's not how human beings
Well, let
work.
me ask the
You
question
don't
directly.
influence people that way.
Let me ask the question directly. Like when it comes to politics, we've just been talking politics, so I'll just use that. And this is in no way me trying to
Yeah.
say like your political views are wrong by any means. It's more trying to understand human nature. Is there a political view that you have? Maybe it's about the vaccine, maybe it's about Trump, maybe it's about anything where you'd say like this is the right view and other people have it wrong.
No.
There wouldn't be that. Okay. All right. So
So
maybe yeah,
this is the way that I operate.
yeah.
I always say I don't give people advice. I
Okay.
empower them to make their own decisions.
Okay.
That's the point. Everybody has different needs, right? Different
Sure.
experiences. And so this is about empowering them to make their own decisions, healthy decisions, what's in their right
So
best
where does the
interest. And how do I know
political
how do we know what's in their best interest?
sure, fair question.
This is where I come from, right? I believe that we are innately capable of making good decisions. If there's an assumption, that's my assumption. Um, we are innately capable if we tune in to our emotions. Number
Hmm.
one, we tune into all of our emotions that we have about that particular situation,
Hmm.
right? And then we problem solve, and what do I want to do about that? What's in my
Hmm. Hmm.
control? And then we have coping skills, right? Um, why we don't do that? That's a good question. I can only go by what I know at this point, which is to say that, again, our environment has evolved a lot quicker than our brains have,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
And so we're presented with a lot of different choices and threats and etc., right? Um, and so there's that. And again, like I said before, um, we do not take psychology seriously, right? People don't learn about this stuff.
Well,
Um,
that's
and,
why I
and
want to
when I say
question it. Like,
psychology, when
yeah.
I say mental health, keep in mind that this is a world that is so complex, right? That you couldn't begin to imagine it. No
Mhm.
offense, but and this is the
There's
this
no
is the
offense taken.
frustration,
Yeah.
right? Um,
But
but
Elaine, can I stop you for a
yeah,
sec? Because that's
yeah.
what I'm that that like the reason I'm asking this is because I think it's a beautiful use case for us to explore, even for yourself, somebody who
Mm-hmm.
is so well versed. What does it look like? Because even that statement about people aren't learning about psychology. It's a tough statement because on the one hand, I get what you're saying. I think I don't have that information. I don't know.
Also, not only are they not learning about psychology, but we already know, we've watched it, right? That our society is imploding. We
Well,
have teen suicide
I'm sorry.
going
I'm
up,
so
right?
sorry to keep cutting you off, but I have to because as you keep jumping in with that, it's kind of making me think of what like
Okay.
we already the state. So let me just
Maybe
say
I'm
a
not
few.
at, I'm not understanding what it is
Yeah,
that you're
maybe.
trying to get
Let me
at.
finish. Let me finish the thought and maybe hear it and then see if you understand what I'm going with it. So before and again, well, let me just say it and then we'll explore it. Before, the speak of politics and Trump and how dangerous Trump is, and we knew that, and this was going to be bad, right? So there's that kind of categorization. There's nobody's talking about psychology. We're not talking about it enough. We should be talking about it more, right? Um, then there's this, we're imploding as a society. From the world I live in, which I'm not saying is the right world by any means, those are all statements of certainty, of extreme, right? The world is imploding. They're not talking about psychology at all. I know this is how humans speak, so I'm not trying to play like semantic games here.
Okay,
What
could
I'm
I just, when you say, let me clarify here.
Sure, sure.
When you say that those are statements,
Okay.
okay, so are you saying that those are not facts?
I'm saying those are
That's
impossible to
like,
be
for
facts.
example, mental health issues have gotten worse.
Well, that's a different statement, right?
Division
The
has,
statements that you're making at times, and I'm not saying this to nitpick you. The statements you're making are nobody's talking about psychology. There's only one person they spoke to in the media about psychology, about mental health, or the
that's
world is
true.
imploding. Though I'm saying those statements are not facts because you
Okay.
inevitably have not looked,
I
you
am
have not seen, you know what I'm saying? So right.
characterizing for
So
the
the
sake
reason I
of
say that
discussion.
again isn't to nitpick and be like,
Right.
"Ooh, you got that wrong." The
Right.
reason I say that is I think this is an illustration of human nature at play, right? And I'm
Absolutely.
asking an open
Absolutely.
question to you because it's an example of how hard this can be. Even for you who knows this so well, likely
Mhm.
the cause of those statements and your feelings and the emotion that
Mhm.
I would argue is underneath those statements of the world
Right.
is imploding or Trump is dangerous or they're not talking about psychology at all. There's emotion underneath that. Are you worried at all that even you, who's an expert on this, don't have the ability to understand those emotions at a level so that you can look at things completely objectively and know that you are making those better decisions? If that question makes sense, like
Mhm.
do those sentiments, the emotional charge, and some of the things we've talked
Right.
about in this conversation, do they give you
Okay.
cause for
So
concern that like it's hard for me to
so
even
let
practice
me let
this?
me